All right, so let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the workshop Building an Expense Tracking App with Bravo Studio and n8n. Today, I will take you through my journey of creating my first low code app and help you create yours. Before we start, a brief introduction. My name is Harshal Agarwal, and I work in the developer relations team at n8n. I love experimenting with tech, and I do a lot of live streams when I'm experimenting with these technologies, and I also often share it on my YouTube channel. So if you are curious to know what I do, feel free to follow me on Twitter. Now, I moved to Berlin earlier this March for my first job, and I was really excited because now I was financially independent. The most interesting part was that I was interested in buying that new game that my friends were always talking about and even get that crypto when Elon tweets about it. But one thing my father taught me was to make sure that I don't spend too much. So I thought about the best way to prevent this, a best way to not get into the situation where I'm like, oops, I spent too much. So I explored a couple of apps to track my expenses, and I tried almost all of them, but they didn't work out well for me. There were a couple of limitations, and two of which I am going to talk about today. The first, every time I made a purchase, I would have to manually enter the data in the app. Now, I'll be honest, I'm a bit lazy and I am an automation enthusiast. So I thought, no, these apps are not right for me. I need to do something else. And the other reason for this was that these apps they didn't have the flexibility to customize certain features. So they were very limited and I could not customize them as per my needs. So I thought, why not build an app for myself? I will get to build something useful and learn new tools at the same time. But now the question was, how? I was procrastinating like a pro on this project. Well, I do almost on all my projects because I came to the conclusion that this would take quite some time and effort to build. And a few days later, one of our community members created a Telegram bot. She used a couple of services to build it. So you would take a picture of the receipt, and n8n would receive that information, send it over to Mindy, which extracts the data out of the receipt, and then add it to a table. So this was extraordinary, and it blew my mind. This was way better than what I originally had in mind. I reached out to her and shared my app idea, and she resonated with me, and she encouraged me to use her own workflow. So this is what I ended up creating. The app is built with Bravo Studio. I'm using Typeform to upload images. So I take a picture, and then using Typeform, it gets sent to Mindy. Well, all this process is happening behind the scenes. So right now, if you see, it's uploading the image, and then we'll submit the image. And that's it. Now all the process happens behind the scenes on n8n. And if I go and check my receipts, there is my receipt in the app. So let's see how it looks behind the scenes, how it looks in n8n. Now, there were a couple of services that I was connecting to. The first was Typeform. The next was Mindy. And then we were storing all the information in Airtable. So all this logic that we will create today will be using n8n. To give you a brief introduction about n8n, it's a FACOD licensed automation platform where you can automate your tasks, sync data between various sources, and react to events. And all this can be done via a visual workflow editor. I know you all might be like, that's enough. we want to build it. So let's get started. Now, you can use n8n either on your own servers, locally on your computers, or use n8n Cloud, which is a SaaS offering from n8n itself. Now, for this workshop, I would highly encourage you all to sign up for n8n Cloud because it will it will help you to avoid dabbling with Docker or npm. But if you are still interested uh, uh, in using npm or Docker, I have shared the link in the chat where you can learn more about it. Now, while you are spinning up your n8n instance, let me give you a quick tour of n8n. So what you see over here is the n8n workflow designer. This is where we will be connecting different integrations together to build our automation workflow. Now, this is the default node, which is a start node. All your workflows start from the start node, but you cannot delete the start node. Now, if you want to add an integration, which we call nodes in n8n, you can click on the plus icon, select the kind of nodes that you want. So for our use case, we would be using Typeform. So let's just search for Typeform, and here it is. We'll get the Typeform node, add it to n8n, and then process through it. So I'm just gonna go through those steps in a few minutes. The other important things that you should know before jumping into creating your own workflows is the menus option. So with this menu option, you can create your new workflows, open an existing workflow. So let's just say I want to go and open my test workflow that I created. So I can quickly open it, make some changes to this, and then start using it. So over here, I can see that there is an error, and it is because I have deleted the form that I was using, and we'll later on fix that. The other options that you can do is save the workflow, duplicate the workflow. So let's just say you have a workflow in ready in production, but you want to try out different things in that particular workflow. What you can do is you can duplicate the workflow and then play around with that copy of the workflow and make those changes. You can always delete your workflows, and you can also download the workflows. So when you download the workflows, it downloads a JSON file for you, which you can then share it with your friends or your colleagues. The next is the options to import the workflow. So you can import it from a URL or you can import it from a file. And then there is settings, which is a bit of an advanced topic, so I'm not gonna go much into this. Now on the top, you can see there is an active button. So with what this active button does, it activates our workflow. So whenever some activities happen externally, we don't have to run this workflow manually. n8n will run it automatically for us and do the processing. In our use case, add the information to our table. All right. Now I want some feedback from you all. So give me a thumbs up if you have your n8n instance up and running. And if people are still setting up their instance, we will wait for a couple of minutes for them. Now, if you are not sure how you can give me a thumbs up, you can click on the participants tab on Zoom. Right beside your name, there is an option to give use these emojis, or you can always share it in the chat. So let me know if you have n8n up and running, and then we can move forward. There is no participant tab. That's interesting. All right, no worries. You can always answer me in the chat. So just let me know in the chat if you have your n8n instance up and running. All right. Awesome. So while other people are still setting up their n8n account, what I'm gonna do is I am gonna go forward and start with the first step, which is creating a form in a type form, right? So once again, what this form is gonna do, it is gonna allow us to upload an image and then send that information to n8n. So go ahead. I am assuming that you all have created an account on Typeform, following the steps that were mentioned in the prerequisites. So in my Typeform account, I'm going to click on new Typeform. So this will create a new Typeform from me. And now again, over here, we want to start building it from scratch. So click on start from scratch and it will create a new form for us. So let's just call this expense tracker and then hit on continue. All right. So by default, Typeform will give you this layout, which we don't really need. And over here, the field type that we are interested in is upload file. So under the type, click on the drop-down menu and go down and select file upload. Now, some of you might not have a pro subscription for Typeform. So I have here a coupon code for you all, which you can use to get 1 month free subscription of Typeform. So if you don't have a pro account on Typeform, feel free to use this coupon code on your new account. I'm also not interested in this particular image. I'm just going to remove this and let's just call this add receipt. All right. So our Typeform is ready. The next thing I have to do is click on publish. And I'm going to copy the link and that's it. So let's open the form and see what it looks like. Okay, I see. So my chat was shared on privately, but here you go. So here is the code. I have again shared the code in the chat that you can use. All right, so my Typeform is ready. Now I don't want to fire this right away. I want to add my Typeform trigger node in n8n. So let's go back to n8n. Now in n8n, if you noticed earlier, there are two different tabs in here. Well, all is general, but then there is regular and then trigger. So in n8n, the nodes are classified into two different categories, trigger nodes and the regular nodes. So what a trigger node does? So we submit a form on Typeform, right? But how does n8n know like the form was submitted? So this is what the trigger node does. Whenever an activity happens on an external platform, this trigger nodes start our workflow. So this becomes the entry point for our workflow. So I'm going to use the Typeform trigger node. Now, this Typeform trigger node has two different kind of authentication method. I'm not going to go too much deep into this authentication method. For this workshop, I am going to use the OAuth 2. Now, this is OAuth. If you're using cloud, using OAuth 2 is the best option because you can create your credentials easily. So if I click on create new, I have to enter the name for the credentials. So this can be something like expense tracker and then click on not connected. So this will take me to the n8n app. I have to give it the required permissions and then save. So now my Typeform account is connected with my n8n account. Now all I have to do is select the form that I am going to use today. So it's the expense tracker. All right. So I showed a lot of steps till now. So I am gonna take a small pause over here and see if anyone has any questions till now. Okay, I don't see any questions coming in, so I am gonna move forward. But before that, I'm sharing the link once again for the prerequisites in case you don't have it. So now that I have my Typeform trigger node configured, what I'm gonna do next is save my workflow. So I'm gonna give it a name, expense tracker. There's already a workflow with this name. All right, so let's give it another name, expense tracker workshop, and our workflow got saved. Now I am gonna execute the node. Remember, we are currently building the workflow, and since we are building this workflow, we need to execute it manually. But once our workflow is complete, we will activate this workflow so that it runs automatically. And in my form, I'm gonna upload a receipt. And submit. If I come back to n8n, we see the response from Typeform. So this is perfect. So we submitted our Typeform, and now we have the response in n8n. Now there is a small issue over here. We are going to use Mindy, which requires the image and not the URL of the image. So we need to fetch that image from the URL. And for that, we are going to use another node in n8n. Now this time we are going to use the node that's called HTTP request. So what does this node do? So this node allows you to make calls to any kind of URL that you want. If you want to fetch a file, you can make a call using this node. If you want to fetch a HTML page, you can use this node. If you want to connect to a service that currently does not have a node with n8n, you can use this node. So with the HTTP request node, you can almost connect to any particular URL. Now, let's just say you want to connect it to an API which sits behind some kind of authentication. So what you can do is you can select the authentication type, create that credentials over here, and then get that and connect it to that particular API. Okay, I'm just trying. Okay. I see a question in the chat. Are you drawing just the flowchart here? Well, I'm not just drawing the flowchart. I am creating the logic for our application. So if you see over here, we now have the response from Typeform. In the next step, we are going to get that file from the URL, and then we are going to proceed forward. So n8n gives you a more visual view of what you can do. So it's kind of a flow chart, but it also, it's just not a simple flow chart. It actually does the process for you. All right, coming back to the HTTP request node. Now we want to get that file. Now we want to get that image. So over here in this URL parameter, we can enter the URL. But when we submit a new receipt, Typeform will generate a new URL for that new receipt. And this is gonna be keep on changing for every receipt. If we enter the value statically, n8n is just gonna fetch only that particular file. So we need to handle that, and we need to tell this node that, hey, you need to get that image that Typeform sends you. So click on the garage icon over here, and then click on add expression. So this opens the expression editor, which is really useful. And I'm gonna show you in a bit like what all you can do over here. Now, because we want to get the information from the previous node, I'm going to select current node, input data, JSON, and the URL. So if you see in the results, now we have the URL over here. Now again, we are receiving a file and not JSON. So let's switch this to file and now execute the node. All right, so we have the file, and if I click on now the binary tab, we have the binary file as well. So let's just check it. All right, so this is the image that I had shared earlier. So just to recap what we did, we send a file via typeform, and then with HTTP request node, we grab that file from typeform. Now the next step is to connect it to Mindy, so that Mindy can extract this information. Now to do that, I am going to use the Mindy node. And Mindy has a lot of endpoints which you can use for different use cases. Since we are interested into extract the information from a receipt, we are just going to use the receipt resource over here. Now I already have configured my credentials for the Mindy node, so I'm going to use that. But if you are not sure how to create these credentials, once again, the link is already in the prerequisite docs that I have shared with you. Or you can always go to docs.n8n.io and search for Mindy. I am going to leave all these parameters to the default values, and I'm going to execute the node. So this is going to process all the information and then give us back the information from Mindy. And here it is. So now we have the category, we have the date, we have the currency, we have the value, and we have the merchant as well. So this is perfect. So now you don't have to manually look out for these values from the image. Mindy handle that for you. All right. Now, before moving forward, we need to create a table in add table, of course, so that we can add it to our table. So here is how my table looks like. The information that I am interested is in the name of the merchant, the total amount, the date of the purchase, the time of the purchase, the receipt, and then the category. So let's wait for a couple of minutes so that everyone is with me and they also have this add table. And let me also share this page with you all with my link. Okay, share the view. So you can also refer to this add table and you can duplicate it and reuse this particular add table as well. Now, while you all are doing that, I'm just going to talk a bit about how you can handle appending data or updating data in Airtable via n8n. So over here, I have a couple of fields, and each field has different names, right? So merchant, total, time, etc. And if I go back to my Mindy node, we can see over here that these column names are a bit different than what we have in our table. Now we need to configure these column names so that it matches the column name in our table, as well as add the correct information to each of these columns. And for that, we are gonna add a node that's called the set node, which will allow us to map this information. I don't want to rush through this step, so I am just going to wait for a couple of minutes to make sure that you all are with me. We are all on the same page. And if you have missed out any steps, or if you are stuck somewhere, or if you have any kind of questions, just ask them in the chat and I'll be happy to answer them. Hmm. Looks like everyone is with me and they are able to follow the steps. I'm gonna wait for 1 more minute before I move forward, just to make sure that we are all able to follow and create this workflow. Well, while we are waiting, I'm just curious to know, like, from you all, how did you manage? How did you track your expenses? What was your process, or what is your process? And if there are any tips that you would like to share, feel free. All right, so I'm gonna move forward now. But if you have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat anytime. I'll be happy to answer that. So now in the chat note, what we are gonna do is we are gonna map all the incoming values from MindE to the particular column in our table. Now in the set node, you can set Boolean values, that's true or false. You can set numbers and you can set string. I am gonna set everything as a string today, but for amount, you can always use number as well. Mm, we have a column that's called merchant. Total, date, time, receipt, and the last is category. All right. Now, we want to get this information all from the previous node. So I'm again gonna click on this gas icon and click on add expression. Now this, all the information is the input data for this particular node. So let's get it from input data, and this would be the merchant. Now, remember I said that this is a bit powerful when you are working with information. So over here you see this is an expression and below is the result, right? Now you can modify this incoming values, and you can also use some small code snippets to modify your data. So let's just say every time that you use this node, or every time there is new information coming in, you want to have some particular static value. What you can do, you can type that static value as well. So let's just say I know that every time I go to Railway, it's the one at Leopoldplatz. So I can add Leopoldplatz. So in the result, if you see, it's Railway-Leopoldplatz. So all the incoming values, all the merchant names will now be dynamic, but the value Leopoldplatz is gonna be static. Since we are not interested in that for our workflow, I'm going to remove it. I just wanted to demonstrate how you can have both dynamic values and static values in the expression editor. The next thing is the total. So let's get it from the previous node. Similarly, I'm going to do this for all the other options. Let's get the date, the time, and now receipts. All right, so I'm going to go a bit slow for receipts because there is a catch over here. So I'm again going to current node, input data, JSON, but there is no URL for the receipt. Why is that? Well, because the Mindy node, it gives you the information that is written by Mindy, right? The Mindy does not give you back the URL of the receipt, but you can still access the value of that receipt. So we know that this value is coming from typeform. So we can go to nodes, select the typeform node, and then output data, JSON, and then the receipt. So now we have the value of a receipt as well. I'm not gonna add category over here. I want you all to try it out and add category. A small hint, we are getting the category in from the Mindy node. All right, so one important thing that I didn't mention earlier is that I have set keep only set to true. Now the reason I have set this to true is because I am now only interested in the values that I am configuring in this node. So let's just add category and see the difference in the output when you have keep only set to false and keep only set to true. Add expression again, and because this is coming from Mindy, I can go to current node, input data, JSON, and then category. All right. So I'm just going to first turn this off, execute the node, and we see the output. So we see the category, the date, the currency, everything that is coming in from Mindy. And over here, we see all the information that we have set in this particular node. Now, once again, we are only interested in the information that we have set in this node. And for that, I'm going to toggle this to true. Execute the node once again. And now we only have the information that we have set in this particular node. So that's perfect. Now the last step is to add the add table node. I'm going to use my credentials that I created for add table. And now we want to append the information. We don't want to read the information. So I'm going to select the append operation, and we need the base ID. So let's go to add table. Click on the help on the top. And at the bottom, there is an option that says API documentation. So once you click on that, it will take you to the documentation of this for this particular base. And then you can copy the base ID. And lastly, we need the name of the table. So I am using the default name, that's table 1. So I'm going to enter table 1 in here. And I'm going to execute the node. All right, so we now have some response from the add table node as well. Let's take a look at the table itself. And here it is. Here is a new entry that we just created. All right, so our workflow looks good and everything seems to be working fine as we expect it to be. So let's go ahead and save it. Now remember, we need to activate this workflow so that whenever we submit the response on Typeform, it automatically runs the whole workflow and adds it to the table. Now you might have a question of why we didn't activate it first and why we didn't uh, build the whole application while it was active. So we don't activate the workflows whenever we are using any kind of trigger node, because when your workflow is active and it is running automatically, you don't see the output, you don't see the response in n8n. You can, however, go back and check your response from the execution list, but you won't be able to see it directly on the editor UI. Let me demonstrate that for you. So I'm gonna now delete all these executions. So if I open any of these nodes, there is no data coming in. Let's reload the form and submit it again. Alright, so Typeform looks good. And let's get to our table, and we see over here a new entry was made. Let's check it on n8n. If I come on n8n, I don't see any data over here. So that is the difference when you are with the active workflows and then inactive workflow. So if you are when you are building your workflows, make sure that your workflows are inactive so that you can run it manually and you can see the output data. But again, when your workflows are active and you want to check for their executions, you can go to the executions list and then open the execution. So now over here, I can open each and every node and see what information was passed. Let's take a look at Mindy, and this was the information. So I hope this clears out your doubt around how you around why you should create your workflows in an inactive state and activate it later on. Now everything looks good, but now we just need to hook this whole thing to our Bravo Studio app. So I am going to use this design that one of my colleagues created for me. Now, as shown in the video earlier, we have 3 different screens. The first is the landing page where we have the option to add a new receipt or check the previous receipts. The next is the screen where we'll be actually displaying the type form. And the third screen is where we will be showing the list of all these receipts. Now, I'm specifically interested in showing you this particular step of how you can embed your type form into a component. So first of all, let me share the link of the design with you. So here's the link to the Figma design that I am using. Feel free to duplicate this and use it for your own app. Now in the add receipt screen, I have a container that's called typeform container, and in that I have a rectangle component which has tags that is web view, and over here I have to enter my typeform URL. So let's go back to our typeform and get that URL. So now I have added my type form to my application. Now I am running out of time. I don't have enough time for you to show you all the steps on how you can add it to Bravo Studio. But I'm pretty sure you all know how you can do this. So once you are logged in into Bravo Studio, you can create a new project and then add your Figma file and then get started. Okay, let's do this. I might be able to show you the initial steps. So let me quickly open Bravo Studio. So I am gonna go to my dashboard. I am already on my dashboard. I'm gonna go to projects, new project, and then paste in the link for my Figma design. Okay. And then click on create project. Now we all know how amazing Bravo Studio is. It's gonna get those components from Figma and build an app. Now to test this, you will need the Bravo Vision. Now I cannot show you how the app runs on my phone, and that's why I won't be able to display it, show you how it looks like on the screen. But I already showed you the video, and you can then if you want, you can resize the rectangle on the way that you want it to render. All right. So before moving forward, I want to know if there are any questions around the workflow that we build, or any other kind of services or on n8n. All right, I am going to wait for 1 more minute and then I'm going to move forward. All right. So I am sharing the link to the workflow that I have created and shared it. So you can simply copy this workflow and paste it in n8n. And all you will have to do is configure your credentials for Typeform, Mindy, and add table, and you will be able to use this workflow out of the box. Awesome. So you all build your first app that connects different services together without writing code. So what's next? What else you can do for this? So I went a bit ahead and tried to configure my Wise account with Airtable. So whenever I make any transactions using my Wise account, this workflow automatically gets executed and adds that information to Airtable. So now I don't have to check my Wise account. I can simply check it from my application. I did something more interesting, is creating this workflow. So let me break this down and tell you what is happening over here. The bank that I use, they don't have an open API that I can use, which definitely makes sense. And they also don't send me any kind of notifications whenever a transaction happens. So what I did was I realized that for some of these online services that I use, if I pay for any of kind of subscriptions, I get an email from them. So I created this workflow which captures these emails from my inbox, filters out based on who is the sender. So let's just say it's BVG. So it goes to the first route over here. If it's a mail from Apple about my subscription, it goes to the second route. And if it's an information that my salary is paid, it goes to the second output where the salary node is run. Now I am using two different emails which are connected to different services, and this is what this particular flow does. This workflow basically looks into all the information that is coming from PayPal, and then based on if based on the subject line of PayPal, like if it's a receipt, if I have paid to someone or if someone has paid me, I break it down into different steps. And all of these are connected to a single node that's execute workflow. Now over here, what I have done is I recognized, okay, I am doing kind of repeated steps after all the set nodes, and that is to add it to a table. So why not have a different workflow which simply adds this information to a table? And this is what the execute workflow node does. So whenever this workflow gets executed, the last node over here is the execute workflow. So it sends all the data to the next workflow. And this is the workflow that gets run. So the add node, it sends the information to add table. The set node then gets the information from add table and sets a particular message, which is sent to another workflow, which I have configured to send me a message on Discord. So every time a transaction occurs and it is added to my add table, I also get a notification on Discord sharing, like this is the amount and this was the merchant. So this kind of gives me a lot of peace of mind, and I now know what transactions I'm doing, and I can now keep a track of all my transactions. Let's talk about what else you can do. So we recently created a beginner's course for n8n. Now we created a mechanism to track the progress of the students. So right from the sign up to generating the certificates, everything is handled by n8n. We have also seen a lot of our community members build social broadcasting apps using n8n. So what this app does is they create the particular content, they click on the button post, and behind the scenes n8n shares it on different platforms. So it can be LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, whichever social media platforms you are using. And other common use case that I have seen, and we use this a lot, is ChatOps. So just to give you a brief idea about ChatOps, it's basically handling operations through your chat platform. So we use Mattermost internally, and we have configured a lot of commands which does some tasks for us. And if you are interested to learn more about how community members are using n8n or what all you can do with n8n, I would recommend you to definitely check out our blog at n8n.io/blog. So thank you all for joining in today. If you have any questions, now is the time to ask me. I would love to answer any of the questions that you might have. And after the workshop, if you are using n8n and if you get stuck somewhere, you can reach out to us via our community forum. That's community.n8n.io. And if you just want to chat about automation, low code, or anything, feel free to hit me up on Twitter. I see a question. To use n8n, have I to register with credit card? You do have to register for credit card, but the good thing is you get a free trial for a month. So you can try out n8n free for a month, and we also send out emails when the date of your trial is when the date for the trial end is very near. So you know if you want to cancel a subscription, you always know when is the right time. But again, if you want, you can then again self-host n8n on your own servers. So if you don't want to use n8n Cloud, you can always self-host n8n on your own servers. Well, thank you, Bravo Studio and the whole NoCode Summer Camp team to giving me this opportunity to talk about n8n and Bravo Studio and sharing how I build my my expense tracking app.